Okay, so the very first movie, and in this movie we are going to talk about the constants and the variables. So this is the most common topic in every programming language because you'll be storing a lot of data, and to store that data you will be needing the constants and the variables. So let's study about them. So let me create a file new, and I'll be creating a new playground, and I'll call it as const and vars. So constants for const and vars for variables. Let's click on the next and save it out there. Now I won't be doing this again and again because it does take a little bit of the time, and instead of just creating the file in front of you, I'll try to create the file before you even arrive on the video. It will save us a couple of moments, and these are very important for the video course. Okay, let me click it here, and here is our var string playground. We'll talk about it later on. Right now I just want a blank playground. Okay, looks cool, sounds cool. Okay, so let's say you're designing a game or maybe a bank application. You will need some data to be stored out there. Some of the data is gonna be constant, and some of them are gonna be variable. So if you want to create a variable, let's say for example you want to take the score and want to make it a safe place, so you'll be needing a variable known as score. So the syntax is really simple. You use a keyword var for the variable and use a variable name after that. Like in this case it's a score, and let's say the player has scored somewhat like 1022, so that's the score that variable is storing right now. And on the right hand side you can see the 1022 is being placed out there, so it's showing us what the value it is. It's not printing out the value on the screen, but we'll do that later on. Have patience, my dear friends. And this is the thing you have. But many times you will want that your data should be fixed. Like in this case, the var score is 1022, and later in the point I can actually change this score value to, let's just say 100 only. And it's perfectly valid. It's completely a pure good code. And notice when the next time I'm actually using the score, I'm not using the keyword var because you just need it one time when you declare your variable, and thereafter in the entire course of the program you can use it without the var keyword because it's just to declare the variable, and thereafter you can use it. But there is another animal, and that is the constant. So you might be thinking, hey, I want my data to be a little bit flexible and I want it all of the time to be changeable, but no. Many times you want your data to be rigid, and in fact the more number of times you want your data to be rigid. So for example, let's say there are number of lives that are given to a player is always a constant. Like for example 3 lives are most the common ones, and you want it always to be 3. You don't want it to be changed, so that's where it goes. And in case I want to have number of lives to be changed later on in the program, somehow I forgot that it's completely one time usable, and I changed it to 5. Now this is going to give us an error. It says that, let me read the error for you, and if I click on this it says cannot assign a value because it's a constant, and constant means it's a constant, you cannot change it. Variables are meant to be changed, so this is a wrong code. And in case you want this code out to be there is a method by which you can comment out the code, and there are 2 slashes, which is a very shortcut method. So this is all about the number of constants and variable. Now here's a good advice for all of you. Now Apple do advise that you make all of your variables and constant out there, but make sure that you use as much as possible as the constants. So they want your code not to be broken anytime soon, so try to use as many constants compared to the variables. So this is a good practice that Apple do recommend out there. Now one more interesting thing that you might be noting, that here I'm using a score, here I'm using number of lives. So this is a good way of naming your variables. For example, many people do like to just teach like that, or try to program like this, var x equals 10. Now this is okay, this is perfectly good for the teaching purposes, but in the life where you actually write some code, x is not at all a good idea because it doesn't show anything to you. And having x equals 10 doesn't show me, but having score equals some number tells me that it's a variable that holds the value of the score. Number of lives hold the value of number of lives, so be constant in that. Have long names for your variables. That's always a good practice. And notice one more thing. When I'm naming my variable, with the combination of a couple of names like number of lives, I'm using a camel case. So what is a camel case? Now it's a jargon word, a programming big word, and it simply says that the first word should be all lowercase and every subsequent word of the next word, every subsequent letter of the word should be capital. So in this case, O and L. Now this is just a common programming practice and not something that is going to give you an error. Now you can define your constant and variables in one line as well. For example, x equals 10, y is gonna be 12, and let's just say oops, you have to put a space out there. Let me show you what the Swift tells you. And let's say the z is gonna be equal to, it's gonna be, let's say 12.2. okay, that's it. So this is again a perfectly good code, and you can comma separate them to initialize a lot of values out there. But do notice there is a little bit key thing here, that this is an integer but this is the double, or this is a floating value which is having the decimal, and both are treated a little bit differently. Now one more interesting thing, let me show you an error out there, because the more number of errors we are going to solve, you're going to learn a lot with them. So let me show you a perfect good code and it's going to give us an error. So it says var a equals 10. This is going to give us an error. Wait a minute for that, and we can see the error is out there. Now this is a very simple error, but I do like this error because it gives you more clean code out there. So the only error it's popping up is you should have equal number of spaces before and after the equal. So the error says that must have consistent white spaces on both sides. This is a very good feature. I'm the fan of this feature because it allows you to have a little bit consistency and more readability in the code. So put a space and there you go. It's pretty easy to miss, but it makes your code a little bit cleaner out there. Okay, so this is the one thing that we have learned about the constants and the variables, and of course we are not gonna just leave it out there. We are gonna talk a little bit more about that. So let me declare one more. So it says, let's just say a welcome message is there, and I'm using a string to declare my welcome message, and it's gonna say welcome to Counter-Strike. No, I'm not the creator of Counter-Strike, but I do like it. So it's a welcome message that says welcome to Counter-Strike. It's perfect, it's valid. But we can see that we are declaring different type of datas like integers, the floating values and the string values. And everything is being automatically taken up by the Swift. We are not saying that declare this variable as a type of integer or declare this variable as a type of string. Swift does it automatically for you, but don't be fooled around here. Swift is very type safe language. Let me show you what I mean. Now when you does something like var welcome equals something like this, now it automatically gets you as a string. But for example, let's just say call it as a test, and you don't want to put any value inside this variable, but when you code it around or you're taking input from the user, you expect this value to come as a string. There is one good method to do so. Now this is known as the type annotation. So you put a colon out there, and after the colon you type on the string out there. Now this variable, the test, doesn't have any value. It's empty, it's blank, but it does expect a value as a string. This is known as the type annotation. You can do it pretty much for anything like integers, doubles or string or anything. But do notice one thing, that the S of the string is capital, and when you do type annotation, you make sure that you are actually defining it as the caps. Now we'll talk about these, what is this capital S and how it is different from a normal variable. We'll talk about that later on. Right now it's important that you declare your first letter as a capital. Now this variable is now string. So if I do something like this later on, test is going to be equal to, let's just call this as something, and literally it's something. So it's perfectly valid, it's completely okay. But what happens if I do 1 2 3? And notice one thing, it gives an error because it's expecting me to give a value of the string, but I'm passing an integer. That's a cheating. And I can change it either here or either here. Let's change it here. So here I am just using int, and there we go. Now it's an integer value and we are passing integer. That's good. But there is one more thing. If you pass on double, for example here double, now notice it doesn't give us an error because double also covers the integer. Sounds strange, but yes, it is. And you can now pass on the values of, let's say, point. So decimals are also allowed. But in case of the strings, it is not allowed. So let me just put it out there and it's gonna run and it says it's not allowed. In many language it does allow, and just get rid of this, but it's not a good idea. I like the Swift for that, because let's say you're playing with the stocks out there, an app that deals with the stock, and getting rid of the decimals or just obsoleting the decimals is not at all a good idea in the application of the banking and stocks, because decimals do matter a lot. Okay, one final thing before we jump off from the topic of the constants and the variables, let me call it as double. Okay, it looks good. That there is a very good feature in the Swift that it allows you to name your constant and variable as Unicode characters. This is interesting. Okay, for example, let's just say var, and let me go into edit and open up the emojis and the symbol. There's a shortcut for that as well. That's a shift, command and space. Let me click on this. And notice now you can use emojis as well. Let's say, for example, I like this black alien guy. I'm a big fan of this extraterrestrial alien. So let me just have this and have the value of it. Let's just say this is a string and this is gonna say I am from, let's say, Pluto. Okay. So this is perfectly a valid code, and you might be thinking yourself that how am I gonna use this? Now honestly, it's not much usable in the general day-to-day life programming, because you will not easily find this symbol out there and you have to open up your emoji or have to copy and paste. But this does matter a lot for the Chinese people, because their keyboard characters are usually in the Unicode character set, and they do want something so that they can actually code into their own variables and in that particular case it's gonna be make life much more easier for those people. So although I haven't coded any Chinese application because I don't know my Mandarin and I'm not good in it, so but a lot of my friends does a lot of codings using these Unicode characters. So the whole story is Unicode characters are allowed, but you won't be using it much out there. And one final thing, when you name your variables and constant, try to name them very explicitly, like very definitely. Like for example, the scores, number of lives. Don't use the keyword like, for example, if I just say repeat, because repeat is actually a keyword, just like the var, which is having some specific meaning in the language, repeat is also having. But in case there is no option in the planet that you have to use the repeat, there is no other option, although it's not a good idea, but in case you want to use this repeat, there is one solution which I do not recommend, but still I have to show you. You can use the backticks and then you can use it. But again, it's not a good idea. Let's say, for example, I define it as 10. It does work. It works really great, but there's no good reason to use these keywords. You can just use something like this. If you, let's say you want to use repeat, you can simply say repeat me and that solves your problem. But again, there is an option of backtick in case you just absolutely have no choice, then you can use it. Okay, so we have done quite a lot of things, but still one thing is missing. How do we print it? We'll solve that in the next movie.